What's up, guys? Doug Polk here, and today we're going to be talking about the Bitcoin Senate hearing. They also talked about a few other various cryptocurrencies, and I just spent the last 3 hours of my life watching this entire thing, taking notes, got a bunch of notes. I was actually really excited about it because I thought this was an important day for Bitcoin. I was excited about what happened. This is probably the most excited I've ever been for a 2-hour Senate hearing. So I've taken notes. I've gone through the whole thing. I know pretty much everyone says across the board. I got some interesting points I want to make. And originally I was thinking I would do a edited video, but the more I looked at it, I just have so much I want to say that I just didn't think it would be formatted correctly as an edited video. I thought it made sense to do it more as a live stream. So I want to welcome all of the live audience. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you're new, make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the upvote button if you like this type of format or you want to see me get on here and talk about various issues going on in Bitcoin. And one last thing before we jump into it, I am starting a new podcast channel. You can check it out. I believe the channel is in my main description, so you can check that out. We're going to get some good guests on. I think I'm already planning on having Jimmy Song join, as well as Jason Les, a couple people that I really respect in Bitcoin, as well as cryptocurrency in general. So we'll start off with those guys. If you have any guests you'd like to see, feel free to tweet at me at DougPolkPoker, and I think we can do a lot. I'm pretty straightforward with you guys. I'm not a super sick expert, when it comes to cryptocurrency. I'm not a developer. I have been in the space for a few years, but I'm not thrilled about the overall expertise on the tech side of things. So part of the reason I'm doing this podcast is because I want to learn and I want to get better at understanding what I'm talking about and become more knowledgeable. I never try to mislead anyone about who I am or what my knowledge is. And I think we should always try to improve our knowledge when it comes to Bitcoin and other currencies. Okay, guys, so let's talk about this hearing. Okay, so a lot of people are chalking this one up as a win. They're chalking this up as Bitcoin triumph today. We did it, guys. We won. And I would say if I had to describe the overall tone, I would say this was a generally positive hearing for cryptocurrency. However, there were a few negative aspects that seem to be kind of glossed over, particularly when I look at our cryptocurrency. When it comes to ICOs, I think there were actually some fairly negative things said here about ICOs, the way that they function, and what's going on with those. But Bitcoin and Ethereum, I think we saw some relatively positive comments across the board. And one thing that struck me was there were a lot of senators, if U.S. senators, specifically at least Mark Warner, as well as a few other people, that seemed honestly interested in this. They care. They want to see what's going to happen. They're on board. They want to see this regulated. They want to see this grow. They want to actually see this one day become something that, changes the world. And that was amazing to see. It was amazing to see actual U.S. senators. These are, pretty much the most important position outside of either the presidency or the Supreme Court. This is, really, these are some of the most important people in the country, and they have such positive things to say. I think it was good. Now, there was some negative stuff. There was a little bit of partisan hackery going on. I honestly hate that stuff, but you really can't avoid it when you're looking at government. But today we're gonna kind of run through here and talk about some of the most important points. Talk about I'm gonna show you guys some clips. So we're gonna talk about them afterwards. I'll answer a few questions and we'll go through it. So planning on doing this for probably around an hour or so. Let's go ahead and jump into it. I also have all these notes I took, so we got some particularly good stuff to talk about. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and put myself in the corner, and we're gonna jump into it. Okay, guys. So this player sucks. Not my fault. It's the government. They can't do anything right, and these are the people that are going to be in charge of the future technology. So good luck, everybody. Let's jump into it.
The committee will come to order. This morning we will receive testimony from SEC Chairman Jay Clayton and CFTC Chairman Chris Giancarlo on the growing world of virtual currencies and the oversight conducted by their two agencies. And welcome, gentlemen. Virtual currencies are meant to act as a type of money that can be traded on online exchanges for conventional currencies, such as dollars, or used to purchase goods or services predominantly online. Additionally, developers, businesses, and individuals are selling virtual coins or tokens through initial coin offerings, also known as ICOs, to raise capital. Over the last year, many Americans have become increasingly interested in virtual currencies, especially given the meteoric rise in valuation and recent fall of Bitcoin. Just for perspective, on January 2 of last year, Bitcoin broke the $1,000 barrier, then peaked in December of 2017 at almost $20,000, and as of this morning is trading at roughly $6,900.
So let's go ahead and jump in and just give a little context here before we continue. This play button's real nice. So this is Crapo. He is the chairman of the Senate committee hearing on banking, housing, and urban affairs. This is one of 20 standing committees in the Senate. This guy is the chairman, and he is a Republican as well as the ranking member, who is a Democrat. And so he kind of opens up with a statement, as well as the ranking member, and they talk about what's going on. And this was generally positive. This was overall, they're here to learn more. This has been rising, massively over the course of the last year or two, particularly the last year. And so I would say that this was generally a positive opening. I don't want to get too into it. Let's go ahead and take a look at who are the people that we'll be talking about.
Programmers and regulators
talking
all over
this.
The world. I don't know how many people imagined how quickly and broadly Bitcoin and the technology it's based on would spread. It's nothing short. To most of us, it's nothing short of remarkable. To be sure, it's critical for our regulators to understand innovation and technology so that markets can grow and evolve while investors and consumers are protected. Understanding the risks of emerging technologies is no easy task, but we rely on you to maintain the integrity of these new markets and minimize the risks to Americans who want to participate in them. The volatility of Bitcoin has been also remarkable.
I'm actually going to let it run and talk over it like this so you guys don't have to just see the big play button. But basically, this is Senator Brown. He is the ranking member. Also had some good things to say, that this was remarkable on both a tech and volatility standpoint. But one of his main concerns are scam artists and hackers knowing more about the market than its participants, which, it does make some sense. Like, if you think about a lot of the currencies we've seen over the last year, we've seen the BitConnects, we've seen a lot of different, projects sprout up that are really people manipulating and marketing and trying to take advantage of innocent people. And so, he's worried about what that entails for the future for the market itself. All right, moving on. Let's take a look at the actual panel once these senators are done talking. So we have the chairman of both the SEC and we have the chairman of the CFTC. So these are two very important government agencies. They act independently. The SEC is in charge essentially of protecting securities. And the CFTC is more in charge of futures and derivatives and that kind of thing as well. So, we've got some really important people here. We've got important senators. This is, one of only 20 committees. We've got, the heads. Here we have Clayton, who is the, Jay Clayton, who is the chairman of the SEC. And then, of course, we have Chris Giancarlo, who, if you've already visited our Bitcoin Today, you'll see has already been gaining some following and some positive reaction from the general community. So let me go ahead and take a look at the next thing I really want to talk about here. Okay, so this is basically where I think I'm going to have to pause it just because, it sucks, but I don't see a good way around it. So this is basically where he says that there are three different things kind of going on with the technology behind cryptocurrency. You've got blockchain technology, which he's for. You've got major cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, which he's generally in favor of, but would like to see more regulation. And then you've got ICOs. And this guy had some strong things to say on the ICO front. So let's go ahead and just play it here, and you guys can listen in.
First, a promising new technology referred to as distributed ledger technology, or blockchain. Proponents of this technology assert that it will bring great efficiencies to our national and global economies, including our capital markets. I hope that it does. And the Commission looks forward to working with market participants who seek to bring efficiencies, including more effective oversight to our markets. The second and third categories are cryptocurrencies and ICOs, which are subsets of the products seeking to take advantage of the commercial opportunities presented by blockchain technology. One is promoted to be a replacement for dollars. The other is like a stock offering. Cryptocurrencies. Some of the more widely known cryptocurrencies were introduced as substitutes for traditional currencies, such as the US dollar or the euro. Those who promote these so-called virtual currencies have asserted they will make it easier and cheaper to buy and sell goods, particularly across borders. They have asserted that transaction and verification fees and costs will be eliminated or reduced. To date, these assertions have proved elusive in many areas.
All right, so this was a bit of a negative thing that was said. I'm going to go full screen for a second so we can talk about it. So he said that these currencies were created to increase speed and lower fees, and that solution has been elusive, which I think shows not really a full picture of what cryptocurrency is about, and is also kind of weirdly selective in its failure. It's not really any news to us as people that have been following cryptocurrency, especially when you look at October through December last year, that transaction costs were high and processing time was quite slow on Bitcoin. And that's maybe some of the reason why we saw a lot of the other altcoins flourish, was because Bitcoin was having problems, with people sending money. I remember one day I had to move some Bitcoin around. And I looked at the fees, and it was going to cost me like $50 or $100 that day just for some not really that expensive transfers, and they were slow. So that was completely ridiculous. And in that regard, sure, he's correct. But meanwhile, there are many other currencies that are not, having those same issues. And also, if you look historically, that wasn't really a huge problem until mid-2017, late 2017. Furthermore, we're seeing those issues become less and less so due to SegWit and Lightning and the Lightning Network. So, while it might be true that we did see some shortcomings here from Bitcoin on those fronts, at the same time, saying that cryptocurrency has missed here because its goals, it hasn't quite found them, it's not really true. And it also does seem to not fully kind of get the point that this is a decentralized currency. I did not hear the word decentralized, I believe, today. I don't think I did at almost any point, which kind of shows you where the government's head's at. They're not really thinking about this as a way for people to have a currency that is governed by math instead of people. They don't really see that aspect. They're looking at a more pure tech standpoint and not really too concerned with decentralization. No shocker there when the U.S. government not concerned with decentralization. So I think that from that perspective, while it's good, the perspective they're taking, which is we're for the tech, we're happy with the direction this is going, it also shows a little bit of a lack of understanding about the way that the currencies function and some of their goals. Deflationary currency that is decentralized and governed by math instead of individual people making decisions. So, a little bit of a short-sighted view here from the chair of the SEC. If I had to kind of give an overview on how I feel the chair of the SEC feels about cryptocurrency compared to the chair of the CFTC, I feel like Jay Clayton he's kind of for it, and I think kind of for it because there are smart people that are for it. In fact, I think he makes a comment later about that. But I'm not totally sure this guy's on board. I think he just realizes he can't really fight with the idea of the technology being good, so he's not fighting there. But he's certainly taking a hardline stance against ICOs, and he also does make some comments that are pretty, mixed bag when it comes to Bitcoin and Ethereum, those currencies themselves. So I think he's kind of trying to reach for negatives here when they might not be as much so what I think exists today. All right, let's go ahead and jump back into it. Also, guys, if you enjoy this format, hit that thumbs up button. Appreciate everyone for tuning in.
ICOs. From what I've seen, initial coin offerings are securities offerings. They are interest in companies, much like stocks and bonds, under a new label. Promoters use the term coin based on the fact that the security being offered is represented by a digital entry or coin on an electronic ledger, as compared with a stock certificate and a related entry in a company's records. You can call it a coin, but if it functions as a security, it is a security. Also importantly, an ICO may have nothing to do with distributed ledger technology beyond the coin itself. Buying an ICO does not mean you are investing in blockchain-related ventures. There are many problems with the way cryptocurrency and ICO markets are operating, but two are worth particular attention. First, the markets for these products have substantially less oversight than our traditional securities markets. To be blunt, if you are trading cryptocurrencies on a platform that looks like a stock exchange, do not take any comfort from that look. Our stock exchanges have extensive rule sets, and they are required to conduct surveillance.
Sorry, guys. My bad. So basically what he's saying here is that, I don't want to go too far into this, but essentially what he's saying is that realistically right now in the ICO space, you've got people kind of going two directions. You've got people that are trying to become securities, and then you have people that are trying to specifically not be securities. And kind of the stance he's taking is, look, you can call yourself whatever you want to call yourself, and you can try and do your best to not be a security. But if people are giving you money and you're speculating the price will increase by them doing work, that is almost by definition a security and thus falls under the jurisdiction of the SEC, which is fairly aggressive because I do think we see a lot of projects doing their best to not really be classified as securities. And, what the chairman's saying here is like, that's just complete bullshit. That's not what's, going to happen. We're going to go after some of these ICOs that are trying to do that. And so I do think that this is a little negative when we look at the ICO space, at least when it comes to accepting U.S. investors. Now, it remains to be seen what the direction will be with that. It remains to be seen how dedicated to the process these ICOs will be when it comes to making sure that funding comes from legitimate sources, obviously KYC, know your customer, all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, when we look at what the SEC is concerned with, in their mind, these are securities, and that's going to be the top and bottom of it. Okay, let's move on to another section here. This is probably the most powerful part of the whole thing. There's some good stuff towards the end, actually. But let's go ahead and listen in here to Chris, some kind of Italian last name, about where cryptocurrencies are and the future as far as the youth of our country is concerned.
Ranking Member Brown, and distinguished members of the committee. I've submitted a written statement for the record that details the CFTC's work and authority over virtual currencies. But with your permission, I'd like to begin briefly with a slightly different perspective, and that is as a dad. I'm the father of 3 college-age children, a senior, a junior, and a freshman. During their high school years, we tried to interest them in financial markets. My wife and I set up small brokerage accounts with a few $100s that they could use to buy stocks. Yet other than my youngest son, who owns shares in a video game company, we haven't been able to pique their interest in the stock market. I guess they're not much different than most kids their age. Well, something changed in the last year. Suddenly, they were all talking about Bitcoin. They were asking me what I thought and should they buy it. One of their older cousins, who owns Bitcoin, was telling them about it, and they got all excited. And I imagine that maybe members of this committee may have had some similar experiences in your own families of late. It strikes me that we owe it to this new generation to respect their enthusiasm about virtual currencies with a thoughtful and balanced response, not a dismissive one. And yet we must crack down hard on those who try to abuse their enthusiasm with fraud and manipulation.
So essentially what Chris is trying to say here is when moon. No, seriously though, this was awesome. He basically said that his kids, his niece, these are people that are actually finally getting interested in investing. Kids don't really care about traditional markets nearly as much as older people do, and it's sort of a generational thing. We're seeing the younger generations be more and more involved in technology, in these emerging markets, in information and data and all this kind of stuff. And so he's saying that this is finally getting people involved with investing. This is something that we should embrace. This is something that is going to be big in the future, and we can try and shut it out and pretend it's not there, but it is there, and it will grow over time. Maybe paraphrasing a little bit there, but those are sort of his general thoughts, which is amazing, guys. This is more or less exactly what we wanted out of this meeting, or hearing. This couldn't have gone better. This honestly couldn't have gone better, at least insofar as what this guy specifically has to say. Okay, let's go ahead and jump down to the next part. There was an interesting note here where I think a lot of these guys tend to not really understand market cap. They made some comparisons to fiat market caps, like the US dollar market cap, compared to cryptocurrency market caps. Some huge differences there. Way more of the cryptocurrency market cap, it doesn't really exist in that the accounts are lost, or the currency aren't really in circulation, and also the fact that the volume is just so much lower compared to these traditional markets that the cryptocurrency market cap not entirely as real as they make it out to believe. But let's go ahead and move on to something a little bit later. Let's go. Okay, so let's go to the first thing here. Here we see someone, I forget which senator it is, but someone really go after Wall Street, which I also thought was kind of cool to hear here. So let me just go ahead and fast forward.
SEC has been quiet under your watch. One study by a Georgetown law professor found that SEC has, quote, virtually stopped enforcement actions against large entities, often referred to as Wall Street firms. How do we have confidence, Mr. Chairman, that the SEC is willing to hold Wall Street accountable when the trend in penalties and actions is going the wrong way?
Yeah, I actually saw that. I saw that report. It probably doesn't come as a surprise to you that someone sent it to me. I found it annoying, to be honest, because it didn't reflect the fact that the gestation period for the cases we bring is roughly 22 to 24 months. So any type of statistics, necessarily have a latency period to them. Our enforcement division put out a report that talks about the numbers in a comprehensive way. I'm happy with that report. I'm also confident that the people who are in our enforcement division and leading it, many of them former federal prosecutors, two of them heads of the Securities Task Force in the Southern District of New York, former heads, are pursuing our securities laws vigorously. I
don't want to get too sidetracked here. He basically goes on to say that the SEC, kind of needs more people, and actually gets asked, what are you going to do without those people? Are you able to really go after these things? He says yes, but he won't directly complain they don't have enough money. But when asked, he just goes smiles and basically yes. Also, on a completely unrelated and not very important note, is it just me or does this guy sound like Rick from Rick and Morty?
SEC has been quiet under your watch. One study by a Georgetown law professor found that SEC has, quote, virtually stopped enforcement actions against large entities, often referred to as Wall Street.
Close. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on. All right. Let's go to this question, because I think this is a good one.
We go here. It's a virtual, and this was not my world. I started out pencil and paper in school, as you can imagine, but in my day. But at the same time, this cryptocurrencies, they lack intrinsic value, it seems to me. They lack liquidity. Sure, people have probably made a lot of money going up, and a lot of them made money or lost money going down, but I don't know where the bottom is, if the bottom was ever reached, as opposed to a sovereign issued currency.
So I think what Shelby is trying to say here is he's trying to understand, what's the inherent value versus, for example, a company that has revenue. And I kind of feel for Shelby a little bit, because he's clearly trying to understand it. He's not saying oh, these things are worthless. He's trying to understand what the worth is and where the bottom is. And the truth of the matter is that the bottom is far lower than when you look at a traditional company that has revenue. Look, if you're a company and you're making money, then you can have a pretty good estimate as to the value of the company. Now, obviously, it's very complex, and sometimes you have to think about assets and debt and all that kind of stuff. But the point of the matter is, if it gets cheap enough to get a share of the company, you can get it, and they'll eventually make it back for you in a couple of years. And if it gets to that point, people are willing to invest. Not really the same case here when we look at Bitcoin. And so, he has a question sort of as to the inherent value of Bitcoin. And let's go ahead and listen to what Chris has to say about the matter.
Who posit that there is a relationship between Bitcoin value and the difficulty or the cost of mining which is a process of electronically producing these, and that there are some charts I've seen that have plotted that correlation that seem to be readily correlated until last summer when the price broke free of that correlation, and that it came back into correlation late at the end of the year last year. Now,
I really like the point that's brought up here because this is a question that people kind of ask all the time, like what is the fundamental value of Bitcoin? And I understand where you're coming from. Like you have a good point, and one of the reasons why we can see volatility with Bitcoin you can't really see with these other markets is for the reasons we just talked about. There is no revenue. It is far more speculative. Use cases exist, but in a much lower quantity than with many traditional currencies. And so what is the value of Bitcoin? And it's actually a kind of nuanced argument to talk about the power of the electricity spent mining actually does matter. That does have value. Now, it's creating issues around the world because of how much mining has to be done. And one of the issues with the SHA-256 algorithm is that it is extremely resource heavy. It is not very efficient when it comes to mining, which is why I like to see projects that continue to try and make it less, be less demanding on hardware and electricity. I think that has positive long-term benefits, but at the same time, it does cost money to mine, and so that does have some value. Now, does that mean that it's worth the same thing as a company generating revenue? Well, obviously that's a complex question. Answer is probably not, but it would depend on the company. It depends on all these other things. The main value, I think, from Bitcoin comes from there's really a couple things, to be honest with you. I think one of the biggest things is that when you look at especially countries where they can't really trust the currency that they have going on in their country, operating by a set code, having a currency that's deflationary and not controlled by government is huge. You look at like countries like Nigeria that suffer from really terrible hyperinflation. Well, now you can actually, be paid in something that can hold value or increase in value, hopefully over time, rather than useless dollars Zimbabwe, not Nigeria, but I'm sure that they both suffer to some extent. Point remains, these are actual use cases. People can hold money here because their currency doesn't have value. Obviously, there will be use cases of people that want to stay off the grid, whether that's for their own personal information or whether that's for criminal activity. I don't know. You just don't know why they're doing it. And I'm not arguing that that's okay or that should be allowed. Obviously, criminal activity we should do our best to thwart. But the point is those use cases will still exist. And so there will at least be some demand from people trying to stay private. Now, people might argue, okay, it's fake anonymity. You don't actually have anonymity when it comes to Bitcoin. I saw Richard Hart talk about this on an interview that he did recently with Ivan on Tech. But the thing is, sure, you're not anonymous in that you do have a set address, but you can control the way in which that address is, accessed. You can, it's going to be difficult for the U.S. government to trace that if you're careful with what you're doing, or any government to trace that if you're careful with what you're doing. Not that you should hide from them. This is not me in any way trying to say that's what you should do. The point remains that you are still just a string of letters and numbers. And while that is part of a public ledger, at the same time, I do think you have, a fairly high degree of anonymity when it comes to your identity on the network. Okay. I talked enough here. All right, let's go ahead and fast forward now to another part here. Let's see. Here we go. This is a really important comment. We're going to fast forward a minute. Sick, Doug, I know. This is an important comment made by Jay Clayton about Bitcoin. This is kind of what I was talking about earlier. We're going to go a full minute forward, guys. It's huge. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Perspective of, look, I look at this as perspective of protecting Main Street investors. They should understand that.
How do you put a value on cryptocurrencies? Does the market put a value on it, or does it go straight up and then straight down, or what?
Basically, this guy's taking a page right out of the Tron Bros. Straight up. Can we get a replay on that? I'm not exactly sure how this works, Shelby. I'm not exactly sure how this works.
Senator, I don't know where there's a process of electronically producing.
Perspective of, look, I look at this as perspective of protecting Main Street investors. They should understand that.
How do you put a value on cryptocurrencies? Does the market put a value on it, or does it go straight up and then straight down, or what?
I have to mean that in the future.
You know, what's something worth? It's what somebody's willing to pay you for it.
Good answer.
In our world, the securities world, you know, there are rules that dictate how much you have to tell somebody about what it is you're selling them.
But part of your mandate or the security exchange is to protect the investor. Is that right?
That's right.
And the chairman of Commodity Futures Trading, he's seen obviously commodities just go wild at times, and your mandate is to watch the commodities, right?
Market integrity is generally perceived to be our core mandate.
You also mentioned personnel, you know.
Oh, shit. You know what? I fast-forwarded to the wrong time. My bad. My B, guys. It's right here.
Do you have any comment?
Yeah, look, there are a lot of smart people who think there's something to the value of the cryptocurrency and the international exchange, and I'm not seeing those benefits manifesting themselves in the marketplace yet. And from the perspective of, look, I look at this as perspective of protecting Main Street investors. They should understand that.
Okay, so basically doesn't currently understand the value yet. He seems to have a little bit of a smirk here. I don't want to speak for someone, and maybe he does believe in it, but I also get the vibe that this guy is a little on the, I don't know, let's just call it negative side of things. Okay, so let's pass through a couple more of these things. Let's go to a little bit further here. This guy, I think he's trying to ask like a decent question, but he gets a little bit confused.
Resources for fintech generally and cyber and cryptocurrencies specifically.
Let me just elaborate a bit. We continue to refer to Bitcoin. That is just one cryptocurrency. They seem to me and proliferating. That every day there's a new variety of cryptocurrencies. Some of them out and out fraudulent. Some of them based on the same Bitcoin technology.
He's saying basically, got that Tron?
Or processes, but just the sheer expansion of these cryptocurrencies is an issue, one. And then two, because my time is short and I have one other slightly unrelated question to Chairman Clayton, is are you tracking all these different daily emerging currencies, one? And two is, again, it goes back to my sort of step back question, is someone looking long-term at the systemic effects? You know, where are we going to be? This is eerily reminiscent of the late 90s in derivatives, which were nominally small.
All right, let's talk about this for a second, because I don't really think this is an issue at all. Basically, if people are constantly making new cryptocurrencies, does that matter? Should we be worried? And I think the answer is almost clearly no. For starters, we see, you know, every country in the world has a currency, most of which have their own currency. Obviously, we see some things like the euro, where many people have the same currency, many countries have the same currency, but you know there are already hundreds of currencies out there. Just because a new one exists, it doesn't really have any impact on the market until it actually has both use cases as well as some type of market cap that's actually significant. I can make up my own goddamn coin right now, call it Doug Coin, and like announce my launch. But guess what? Doug Coin's worth $0. Unless people like Doug Coin, which, you know, realistically, like, it's a nice coin. It's going to have my face on it. No, seriously, like, it doesn't really matter how many currencies there are. any person in the world could, quote, make their own currency, and that doesn't actually mean shit, right? So I don't see why the total number of currencies is really that big of an issue. Now, if he's saying that number of substantial currencies, maybe it makes a little more sense. But even then, why does it matter? Why does it matter if there are many different people or many different currencies that are kind of competing for growth? I don't really understand what he's driving this at. I really do feel, again, like this is someone on the Senate who wanted to engage in this conversation and is trying to understand. Like, that's the thing. Like, I know why do you guys hate the government. I'm not saying they're great people, but like, at least from what I saw today, I think that these people are honestly trying their best to understand what's going on and learn and like be able to make effective regulation. And so like, I don't really like to make fun of people too much that are really trying their best, but this guy obviously doesn't really know what's going on.
All parts of the market that were esoteric, et cetera, and then of course 10 years later exploded. So why don't you start with Mr. Giancarlo and the chairman, and I'll finish up with the chairman.
Thank you very much. So you're absolutely right. Bitcoin is one of many. However, of the many, there's really a handful that have gotten significant traction, and so that's important though for listeners to know, because so many of these are fraudulent, as you said. We went after one, and just mentioned it because I think it's interesting, called My Big Coin, which became known as My Big Con by people that were defrauded by it.
This is actually a question I have for you guys in the chat. Has anyone heard of My Big Con before? Because I have legitimately never heard of it. They brought it up a few times in this hearing. Never even heard of it. So let me know in the comments below if you guys have heard of that before. News to me.
It was people that really were taking, it was a Ponzi scheme. They were taking consumers' money and use it to buy houses and furniture and jewelry. And we went after them hard, and we will continue to do that.
Thank you.
In terms,
all right, let's move on here. Let's move on a little bit over to 63.
This don't quite understand, still have to be answered. And I just want to start out, because I think, Mr. Clayton, you started with this discussion with regard to the issue of whether or not you had control over an ICO, and the fact that if they were issuing, in this particular case, Bitcoin, or the opportunity to market it, you had identified it as a stock, or at least a value of something. What is, in this particular case, that thread that you utilize once again, and can you delve into that a little bit more about how your agency responds to the regulatory need in this particular case? What is the specific item that you look at as being an item which is subject to your review? A security in what?
The definition of a security is broad, and it includes. I'm going to not use the technical terms. There's Supreme Court cases and things like that, but it includes if you are offering me a security or offering me something, a coin, and I give you money, and the purpose of me giving you that money is to profit from your efforts going forward. So if I give you money, and you give me a coin, and you say I'm going to take the money and I'm going to grow a business, and that's going to increase the value of that coin. And by the way, Chairman Clayton, you can trade it to somebody else. So you may be able to get value for it tomorrow. In fact, you probably will get value for it tomorrow. Buy now so you can get more value for it in a few days.
So basically he's saying, this is actually kind of a tough point for ICOs in general. He's basically saying that if you sell something for money to someone that may increase in value from work that you do that can be traded, then that is a security. Which kind of really brings up a whole new slew of questions. One of the biggest ones that I have is like, okay, well, and this might sound kind of funny to some of you guys, but what about video game skins, right? We see tokens like Wax, which is trying to allow people to trade video game skins. Well, if you buy a video game skin from a company, and let's say that they stop producing them, and thus the value ends up going up because there's more demand, it becomes more popular, and it's a tradable item. Is that a security, or is it not a security because it's not based around the work of the company? Well, what about something like Dogecoin, which hasn't had a development team in a couple of years now, but is still being traded? well, is that a security? Is it a security because people are buying and selling it? Because if it's just buying and selling it, then why aren't video game skin securities? I mean, look, I know it's a bit ridiculous. I'm not arguing that if you buy an op skin, that should be a security and should be filed with the SEC or registered with the SEC. But you understand where I'm coming from. This is a very, very general and broad term, and the way he's describing it, I feel a lot of things kind of fall under that jurisdiction. And so, we'll see how technical the SEC plans on getting moving forward. But, no doubt, if you're in the ICO space, like some people like me, then, you're going to have to be a little more worried about this moving forward and make sure that you're trying to comply within, within the law. So let's go ahead and move forward a little bit. Oh, this was great, guys. You're going to really love this. I know you guys, trust me, you're gonna love this one. I know you guys are gonna love this. Let's see. By the way, when this happens, you know what it is. Hit the thumbs up button. You're gonna know what it is.
Both. What's so challenging about Bitcoin is it has characteristics of multiple different things. One of the phrases that's often used is that Bitcoin is a medium of exchange, a store of value, or a means of account. Well, those three things have different connotations to them. If it's a medium of exchange, then it's like a currency-like instrument. And yet, as we've seen, a number of means of exchanges have been closed to Bitcoin. There was recently a Bitcoin conference that stopped accepting Bitcoin for registrants because they couldn't process the payments. So, but yet it's still spoken of as perhaps a means of account. And in that case, it has implications from the Fed and currency. From our point of view, when it's used as a store of value, then it's very much like an asset, like a commodity. And in fact, what we hear a lot of is people buying and holding. If you go onto the Twitter universe, you'll see a phrase HODL, which means hold on for dear life. And the thinking is that they buy it and hold it. In fact, I mentioned in my opening remarks, my 30-year-old niece
God damn it, guys. I'm sorry. No sound. Mic muted. Okay, so that just happened. We just saw the chairman of the CFTC say to the U.S. Senate committee, tell them about hodling. That happened. That happened here today. He actually told them about hodling. Unbelievable. Like, I did not think there was any chance that could happen today. I didn't think that we'd see this for a long time. He's actually embracing the culture of cryptocurrencies. So it's not still muted, right? No, it's not. It can't be. It can't still be muted. Long time. He's actually. You guys are trolling me. Guys, goddamn it, you're trolling me. You're trolling me again. Okay, so we see that like he understands what's going on. His niece is hodling, right? He understands that this is a long-term hold for many people. This is something that the community is embracing, and that it's not about like what happens today. It's not about what happens tomorrow. It's about what happens with Bitcoin in the future. No doubt in my mind that cryptocurrency has value, and I strongly believe that long-term we will see success for Bitcoin. I'm not a financial advisor. All investments have risk. This channel is for education, entertainment, information, et cetera, et cetera. Please, just the disclaimers. Anyway, so all those things considered, pretty good spot. Happy to hear him on board and understanding the culture as well. Okay, let's move forward. Oh yeah, so let me talk about something here, guys. I'm going to talk about something, something that upsets me, something that annoys me a little bit. And I'm gonna really try and keep this away from being too political, because this is really not what this channel is about. But I really dislike when politicians just take issues, really just kind of turn it into their completely own thing, essentially purely for like political, their political agenda. And what happens next with Senator Elizabeth Warren, it just couldn't be a better example of that. And a lot of people, they just want to kind of like, pen you in like, Doug, are you a Democrat or are you a Republican? Because like, yeah, like I hate those guys, right? And it's like, you know what? Honestly, like I'm a moderate, and to not be like a complete sellout vanilla, just like everyone's great. I do lean liberal. I would call myself a moderate liberal. But like what Elizabeth Warren does next here is just completely out of line, totally ridiculous. She basically doesn't even talk about Bitcoin. She just like goes after the head of the chairman of the SEC here, basically for her own political agenda. It was needless. As you know, I had watched an hour of this already. It was out of place. It had no relevance to the discussion, and she basically just goes after this guy for, I don't know, I'm going to say no reason. I mean, I'm sure she feels strongly, but let's go ahead and take a quick look at what happens.
Who is what?
Back in at a later date, after they've had an opportunity to look at the differences, would be very appropriate. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Chairman Clayton, on January 26, Bloomberg published an article entitled SEC Weighs a Big Gift to Companies, Blocking Investor Lawsuits. Now, as you know, class action lawsuits are how investors can hold companies accountable when they defraud people. And the article says the SEC is thinking about letting companies sell shares in initial public offerings while at the same time allowing those companies to prohibit investors from bringing class action lawsuits against them. Wow. I mean, forcing investors to give up class actions when they've been defrauded. The SEC has never allowed corporations to bar investors who get cheated from bringing class action lawsuits. So I just want to get a straight yes or no answer from you on this. Do you support this enormous change in SEC policy?
So
This was essentially totally ridiculous. First off, nothing to do with the hearing. Like, it was basically like she sat there 15 minutes thinking about some other things she's going to talk about. Nothing to do with cryptocurrency. Nothing to do with what's going on. And then kind of ends on a pointed yes/no question that like forces you into a side. Like, I mean, this was ridiculous, you know. And it's actually funny because coming up here, we're going to see in a second, another Democrat ends up like really like knowing a lot about the subject. Definitely the most informed person today. So I at least feel I'm not trying to play favorites here. But like, this is not the time to do this. This is one of the reasons why I find these hearings kind of annoying. Let's like focus on the actual issue and talk about what's going on instead of just using this to be like, yeah, so what about that other bad thing you're doing? Was it bad? Yes or no? It's like, okay, I mean, you're basically just using this as a platform to attack them. I'm not going to get too political, guys, but like, I mean, it's a Senate hearing. There's only so much I can really do. We're gonna move past this. This goes on for several minutes. I don't really see any need to. Let's go on to the next thing here. Let's see. Okay, now this. So then I actually don't even know if this next guy is a Republican
I
or
want
not.
to go change the subject just a little bit back to Bitcoin here, or to cryptocurrencies. You know, we see in IPOs and tax.
Look at this guy's. Look at Jay Clayton? Look at Jay Clayton's face when he says, "I'm going to change the subject back to Bitcoin."
I don't know if we all know enough yet to know that, right? South Korea and China are
market. To be frank,
Can I just fast forward?
you know, tax loss and things like that are there. Of course they are.
We'll move forward.
Because it's record keeping, it's difficult to trade.
Okay, let's go to a little. Everyone likes some good P&D, right? Let's go to a little pump and dump action here at 78.15.
respond to the pump and dump efforts that are underway right now. You see this beginning to develop. Can you? I know you're both involved in this. Can you both address what your agencies are doing to combat that?
Senator Perdue, this is one of the things that I'm worried that investors don't understand, which is when you have an unregulated exchange, the ability to manipulate prices goes up significantly, and you know, just a few coordinated sales can change a price.
Or an email.
This is totally correct, by the way.
Correct.
I've mentioned we formed this virtual currency enforcement task force. I mean, We've got some really good people on this, and we've brought 3 actions in the last few weeks.
Let's actually talk about the manipulation of the markets here for a second, because I think this is another important topic that they're bringing here that is going to be important for the long-term success of Bitcoin. Now, you know, in traditional markets, you're not allowed to trade off insider information, and it's to protect the stock. Like what people could do if they knew a bad earnings report was going to come out, they could sell their stock. Get ahead of it, sell for a better price, and the stock dumps while they're selling, and then the public finds out, and then they don't really have an option. They basically have to sell at the current price, which would be falling before anything happened. Now, that's not illegal in cryptocurrencies because they are really not regulated, or rather not regulated as much as they should be. So we see things like Coinbase. This was really fucked up, guys, what happened with Coinbase and Bitcoin Cash in December. I don't know how much Roger Ver might have been involved in this, but it certainly does seem, I would say, the optics are bad. Basically, the day before Coinbase added Bitcoin Cash to Coinbase, all of a sudden the Bitcoin Cash price started spiking. And, you know, it went up like a substantial amount over that day. Next day it gets announced, we got Bitcoin Cash. But why did the price jump huge right before, right? And it's because people knew. I don't know what Coinbase is supposed to do. I mean, what are you supposed to tell all your employees? Hey guys, hey, everyone listen up. Okay, I'm going to give you some information. And if you use this correctly, you can double or triple your money. But you've all got to promise me no one's going to do that. Like, oh yeah, I definitely won't do it. And of course, the money is all anonymous on the internet. Good luck with that. Good luck with that approach. So, you know, that's not even illegal. Maybe it's against company policy, but people can do that. People can manipulate these markets. Personally, I feel this recent crash in the price, there's a fairly good chance that it had something to do with institutional money kind of playing with the market. Either they propped it up before, or they're trying to, you know, sell to lower it to buy back because of all the fear surrounding what's happening with Bitcoin. There's obviously, you know, there's too many factors at play to really say it's any one thing for sure. But at the same time, you know, those things are absolutely possible. And because the total amount of volume doesn't have to be significant to fairly aggressively move markets, what are relatively small amounts of money for institutional investors or hedge funds or things like that can end up being a really like seismic change in the price of these cryptocurrencies. So we need some type of regulation on that front. You can be real Wild West, say, you know what? Everything goes. But guess what? The people with the money, they will destroy you. They will crush you. They will know when it's going up. They're going to know when it's going down. And then you know what they're going to do? They're going to use your money as the cannon fodder for them to run the market. So I do think we need some regulation. I do think we have to, you know, have some standards. I think that there shouldn't be insider trading. I think that should also apply to cryptocurrencies. I think we need some. I think we need more regulation in some capacity. Now, I'm not saying we should stifle innovation completely by regulating things to death, but I do think that we have somewhat of a responsibility to protect people that are trying to invest in what they believe is the future. And that's my opinion. Obviously, that's not fact. That's my opinion on what should happen from here. Okay, let's move forward a little bit. It talks a bit about protecting people from fraud and manipulation here when it comes to pump and dumps. And they also say that they're going to need some more regulation. Okay, so this was a bit. This is a bit of a funny bit here. 8245.
A group of our friends and neighbors from Kentucky, and the title of the article was "Bitcoin is my potential pension." What would you say to them to help protect them?
Oh yeah, you guys
from,
just full screen
winding up in a situation a few years from now where it didn't quite work out the way they were hoping.
It's such a troubling development, Senator, unquestionably, which is why we're putting out so much materials. But what I would say to them is it's the same advice I'd give my children. If it sounds too good to be true, it is. If they're promising ridiculous returns, they're ridiculous. If you are going to give them money, you'd better be prepared to lose it.
I agree with everything that Chairman Giancarlo said. I also would say this to them, which is there are things like disruptive technologies that come along, but they shouldn't disrupt the way you look at markets for us or the way you look at investing. Pumping all of your money into a disruptive technology has a very high likelihood of not working out for you as an individual.
All right, let's talk about that. A lot to unwrap there. So for starters, view cryptocurrency as a risky decision or as a risky play. Not necessarily bad. I think it's good. Personally, I invest in it. Not saying that you should. You should do what you believe is correct, but I believe in the long-term value of it, and I think that it will be successful. But no matter how you want to slice it, it's risky, right? And that's one of the reasons why, even though maybe I was more aggressive in what I invested in cryptocurrency compared to a lot of people, I didn't go all in. You know, I kept a somewhat reasonable, third-ish of my net worth or something in cryptocurrency. Whether you think that's reasonable or not is really up to you to decide. But to me, I thought that was what I wanted to do. I thought it had a lot of value, and frankly, I can handle if we lose a lot of value. It doesn't really get to me. It doesn't really hurt me. Actually, I don't know if it's just coming from poker where you're used to swings all the time, but like this dip, I didn't actually affect me like at all. Like I just like to joke around a bunch about like, the dip on Twitter or, maybe joke with some friends and stuff. But like people say like, oh, it's not getting to me. I'm good. I'm definitely, but seriously, like I feel good, so. It didn't really get to me. Obviously, I knew this could happen. I always said in my videos that there were risks associated here. We could absolutely see a correction. It doesn't mean you know when, but that could happen. And so you should always have other options. Don't if you're an older person and you're debating retiring and you're like, oh, I'm going to live off my Bitcoin. Please don't. Please just don't do it. You can maybe get a little bit, but as you get older, you want to have less risk, not more. So I think it does make sense as a younger person to go hard, go ham if you want to. But as you get older, you have more of a responsibility to yourself and your family to understand the risks. And that's a bit of a problem. If people don't understand the risks and they get pitched Bitcoin as a for sure thing, well, then, yeah, there can be problems down the road. Now, I'm more of a believer that responsibility lies on the person investing. However, if there is misleading and manipulative advertising going on, then that obviously has to be stopped too. So I think the blame is sort of on both sides there. At the end of the day, though, you control your money. Don't be an idiot. There's no free lunch. Basically, if something does sound good to be true, like they're saying, then it probably is. Now, I also feel that he's kind of undervaluing like disruptive technology as like, yeah, you know what they say about disruptive technology? Always fails. No, like that's not what disruptive technology is. It changes the way that the landscape is, right? I mean, Facebook was disruptive to social media, right? And that probably went pretty well for some people. So all in all, agree with the sentiment, but I do think that people should not write things off just because they feel like it can be risky. Risk is fine as long as you take it in a reasonable dosage. Guys, are you that annoyed? Are you kidding me? Jesus Christ, you guys are just so... Why are you guys so annoyed about the phone? My God. Okay, let's go ahead and move forward. Let's go to... Oh yeah, let's go to this guy. So we're going towards the latter half of the interview here. This guy just goes down a real weird line of questioning, which is...
So I hold generally traded funds.
He asked him the last time he bought a stock or bond.
Well, probably before I pretty much put my investing...
a year ago?
Well, probably before I started at the commission.
2 years ago?
Yes.
Okay. When you bought it, what'd you buy? Equity or bond?
Index funds, mostly.
Index funds, okay. When you bought it, did you sit down and read the prospectus for the index fund?
Well, I'm not supposed to say this as a lawyer. I'm not supposed to say that I probably didn't read it cover to cover, but I will confess that I didn't read it cover to cover.
How many investors do you think do that? Don't read it?
I think most.
Okay. So what's the point?
I think this is like an outrageously stupid thing to say. It's basically like, okay, so if people don't read something, like, why put it out there? So don't print any books, or like what? Like what are you saying? Like if people, you know, I'm all for effective legislation that actually does stuff. But if you're trying to say like, oh, if no one's reading something, then why put it in there? Like, what are you getting at? It shouldn't happen. I mean, he does go on to say that it should be in terms that are less for lawyers and more for people. But, you know, look, man, like, I really don't know what you're asking this guy to do. Like, that you're basically like you're basically saying to the chairman of the CFTC, like, hey, why is no one reading stuff? Like, what do we do about that? What's he supposed to say? You know, they should read it, you know, or people shouldn't be responsible for themselves, or, you know, this line of questioning was kind of weird to me. He did kind of clarify it more to say that, like, he wants it to be a bit simpler and a little less legal, but it has to be legal because we're talking about securities. It just a real weird line of questioning. Didn't really honestly, like, this guy just seemed like he walked him down like, have you bought stock? Did you read the stock? Like, I don't really see why it's, you know, too relevant at all. And I don't know, it just doesn't seem relevant. Okay, let's go to a little bit of misinformation that was spread here at 28. Okay, let's go right here. Okay. And then we'll put me in the corner because I'm really bad at that. But let's just move on.
Say, read this and tell me if it makes sense to you. I mean, what's the point?
He goes on about this for a while.
How far do you think we ought to go here in terms of cryptocurrency? I'm separating this from the blockchain technology. I mean, China outlawed it. So I think South Korea has too.
All right, so China has put bans in place on certain things. I'm not sure if everything in China is illegal. I know some things are for sure. They definitely banned ICOs. I think that they might have recently banned Bitcoin as well. I haven't been too up to the news on that. So I'll let China slide. South Korea, they changed things. They banned individual accounts that don't have names on them for people holding them. So like, oh, Korea banned it, China banned it, and now America's going to have to ban it too. It's like, not even really what's happening, and also not really that relevant, I think, like what other major countries decide to do as far as their regulation. You know, there are many policies America has that suck, and most of the other world doesn't have those policies, but then we're like, we're America. So, I don't know, kind of a weird point. Certainly spreading some false information here as far as Korea, like just banning Bitcoin. I don't even know. Wow, $100 donation. Fix the foam, Doug. Follow me on Twitter. Thanks, man. Appreciate the $100 donation. That's a serious donation, man. In these tough times, guys, we're going to have to resort to things like donations on YouTube. You know, tough times. Okay, let's move forward a little bit. Where is this? Oh, yeah, so here we go. Let's go to this right here.
Disclosure, but you got to have disclosure that makes sense and helps people.
This guy in the disclosure.
Other than the lawyers.
I agree, Senator.
He just can't let it go. He just can't let it go.
Senator Warner. I usually agree with my friend from Louisiana, but I think we may be on top of something that is transformational.
Okay, before this guy talks, actually, let me just go full screen. Actually, I'll stay in the corner here, but I want to pull this guy's Twitter up real quick. So basically, I thought this guy was awesome. This guy's name is Mark Warner. I think he's a senator from, I want to say, Virginia. He goes on to be knowledgeable, to ask great questions, to understand what's happening, to talk about how Ethereum is different because, you know, it's an application running across different computers. I mean, this guy, like, knew his stuff, asked good questions, was knowledgeable, thinks it's the future. I mean, this guy is a beast. Honestly, like, mad props to this guy. I tweeted at him earlier today because, like, we need people like this out there fighting the good fight. Let's listen to a lot of what he has to say because I think it is good for us to hear that there is somebody, you know, in the U.S. Senate who actually, like, knows what's going on. Now, that does not mean he's an expert or a tech expert or anything like that. It's certainly not the case, but he does seem to know what's going on. I also reached out to him. I went over to his Twitter account. He was already following me, which I guess, like, he even is in the space. Like, you know, he follows 18K people. It's not too special, but this guy seems like he gets it. So let's listen to what he has to say.
And I don't think you can separate the underlying distributed ledger or blockchain from some of these crypto assets.
So on point.
And if we had the same rate of increase that the next 2 years that we've had the last couple of years, we're talking now a couple $100 billion, we'd be at north of $20 trillion caught up in this area
Not
by
really
2020.
too likely, but sure.
And I think I remember back, I was lucky enough to get in the cell phone business back in the early 80s, and everybody thought it was going to be a small business, and they were wrong, and I got rich. I think we're looking at the same kind of transformation about to take place, and we are going to have to wrap our arms around it. We've talked about some of the consumer protection issues, but we've got money laundering issues. We've got cybersecurity issues. A third of the Bitcoin exchanges have been cyber hacked between 2009 and 2015. I'm not exactly sure what the right regime ought to be, but I would argue that, well, I commend the Treasury Secretary for putting a working group together, but I would argue this is the reason we created FSOC in the first place, that this rises potentially to the level of a systemically relevant event, and I'd just be curious whether you believe, and I commend what both of you are trying to do, but whether this ought to elevate to an FSOC level analysis.
So, Senator, I had the same question you had, which is there's a big rise here. If it does keep going, is this a systemic issue? Which is one of the reasons we brought it up at FSOC, talked about it at FSOC. I again commend the Treasury Secretary for forming the working group. I want to go back to separating ICOs and cryptocurrencies.
Here we go with the ICOs.
ICOs are securities offerings.
Not a
we
fan.
should regulate them like we regulate securities offerings. End of story.
Let me make sure, because I've got a couple more points. Thank you, Senator. Just real quickly, on the issue of disclosure, sometimes what we're seeing is not a problem of absence of disclosure, it's false disclosure. And false disclosure is often fraud, and I think we need to step in there. But just in terms of discussion, as Chairman Clayton mentioned, we have begun discussions at FSOC. In addition, there's also been discussions led by Chairman Clayton at the Financial Stability Board and also at IOSCO, which is the International Organization of Securities Commissioners. So these discussions are taking place at the right levels of debate, but there's so much more to be done.
And again, to my friend from Louisiana point, we've got this, we're focused a lot on Bitcoin and crypto assets, cryptocurrencies, and I think there's even definitional issues here. But you've got a whole new platform called Ethereum where they're creating, file sharing or extra computer time. I'm not
File
sure
sharing, but
what
he fixed it a little bit.
What kind of assets those fall into? Are they potentially regulated within your realm, or if there is a trading
really
exchange,
question, by the way.
a tokenization exchange between excess computer time? I'm not sure where that fits at this point.
The definition of it.
So basically, what he's saying here is, okay, so it's all well and good if it's just pure like speculation on like the price of something, or if you're investing in sort of like the future of what like a company's doing. But what about things like platforms like Ethereum? I mean, there's a U.S. senator who knows that Ethereum is a platform for applications. I mean, that's maybe I just view the bar as super low for what our government knows, but that seems like pretty amazing to me. And so the question becomes, if it's actually now doing something, and the point of it, is to allow transactions to be facilitated, is that a security? And now we're getting into kind of weird territory. So it has utility in that it's allowing applications to run, and that's what's determining its value, but also its value is very much being determined by speculation. You're getting into weird territory. You see what I'm saying? Like, honestly, like, I'm just really pumped about this. Like, this guy's like, he knows what's up. He's asking good questions. And yeah, I mean, it's just good to see that there's someone in the mix that has some knowledge as to what's going on.
The security, I believe the people who wrote the 34 Act and the 33 Act, they were smart. They did it on a principled basis.
I was going to look up what that was.
They basically said, if you're giving people money in exchange for a future development of a business with the hope of a return, and whether that return comes in the form of server time or your ability to sell server time, it's a security.
But there are been, and I concur with the approach you've taken in terms of the ICOs, and I think there's been some very bad behavior. Yet, certain ICOs, the SEC has not stopped. Others they have stopped. And are you going to go back and re-review the ones that have gone forward?
Let me say another thing about the 33 and 34 Act. when they were written, there was a great recognition that there was a tremendous amount of securities activity in this country, and that we were going to rely on gatekeepers to help us enforce those, and liability to help us enforce those rules. Accountants, lawyers, underwriters, sellers, and the like. I'm counting on those people to do their job, and I've made that clear.
So I mean, he's basically saying like he's going to try to do what he can do, but like, you know, there are so many ICOs, totally unrealistic for anyone to be able to really fully stop it. He asked some questions about Bitcoin futures too, which I thought were interesting, but we don't have all the time in the world. So let's go ahead and move on here to 98, so it should be 138.
And by the way, I'm no pie-in-the-sky dreamer. I just report what I read, but the applications range from enormous potential in financial services industry and the banking industry, but right down to the way charity dollars are spent, the way perhaps refugees are accounted for across the globe. There was an article just this morning about the use of distributed ledger technology for 2.5 billion people around the world who don't have access to banking services. One of the areas that, in our own area of agriculture futures, 66 million tons of American soybeans were just handled through a blockchain transaction by the Dreyfus Company for sale to China. So Bitcoin is now being used. It's used in our American transportation and logistics system. And most importantly, the potential of distributed ledger technology for regulators to be able to do really close market surveillance. And if it had been available in 2008, if we had been able to see the counterparty credit exposure of one bank to another bank in real time with precision, that would have enabled much more precise policy choices that had to be made in a rush without good data. So
Giancarlo gets it. Like, you know, he understands the tech. He understands the upsides. He's talking about, you know, use cases where this could have value. He's talking about how this could increase security. I mean, like, this guy's on board. You know, this guy is fully on board. Again, we're seeing kind of the difference between both the people that are here for this hearing today. Okay, let's move on. Let's not. Oh yeah, this was. Someone asks, why is it volatile? To which, really, the only answer was because people are buying and selling. It's kind of a stupid question. This guy, I think this guy should be a meme. Let's take a look here. 93, what is that? Wait, did we already pass it? This guy, no, 103. Oh, so it's 103, so it's 143. IMO, this bro in the back, guys.
Of evading U.S. sanctions.
What is this guy doing?
Last month, I sent a letter to Secretary Mnuchin on this subject.
Look at this. Look at this guy. Is this guy just trolling? Is this guy just straight trolling? Can you guys see this? Is this guy just trolling right now? It seems like this bro is just straight trolling. This guy's got some Tron, I'm telling you. This bro is on the Tron train. All right, let's move on. That guy needs to be a meme. when your government supports Tron, and it's just like that guy's face, IMO. All right. So some questions about dodging sanctions, yada yada. There was a little bit of a point brought up here. I'm actually gonna go full screen and talk about this for a little bit. Talking about promoters when my mic's on, right? Okay. Talking about promoters and what the legality is. I was looking up some information myself because as a promoter, so let me rephrase, as an influencer, you don't want to be making any mistakes when it comes to legality, right? Now, one of the things that's been good for me is that I've never taken money to talk about anything in the short history of this channel. But the restrictions are clear. People cannot get paid without disclosing. If someone is telling you about something and getting paid, not disclosing it, that is explicitly forbidden by the SEC. So be careful out there, guys. I don't think people are disclosing it. We saw earlier when, a month ago when Data Dash came forward about Substratum. I have to imagine that other people did too, especially like if you saw someone else talk about Substratum in that time period. I don't know, guys. And I can personally tell you from my inbox, my multiple inboxes, I get flooded with people asking me to pay, if they can pay me money to just shill their garbage. I'm just not going to do that. I am going to promote things on this channel that I think are good and I invest in. So basically, if I'm talking about something in a positive way, I put my money where my mouth is, so to speak. and I am going to do that. I don't know what the exact perfect line is. Everyone just, everyone has different opinions. I understand that. My personal opinion is I'm going to talk about good projects and things I believe in, because otherwise it would be weird. It'd be weird to like, oh, we can't talk about any currencies. Oh yeah, one more thing while I got you here, guys. One thing I see way too much of, not just in cryptocurrency, but in general on YouTube, everyone likes to hold hands and sing kumbaya and be like, oh, you're great. No, you're great. And like, everyone's amazing. But the thing is, there are certain currencies that I think suck, right? And so I'm going to say that. And I know that's going to make those sub-communities mad at me. I actually want to issue a small correction here about Icon. I said that the mainnet was delayed in my last video. That's actually incorrect. The mainnet launched, but without wallets. So the token swap from the testnet to the mainnet didn't occur, and the main network, essentially, you can't use it. I said delayed, but it actually launched, but you can't use it. Whatever. I know technically they're right. I said it incorrectly, but the premise is the same. You can't use the mainnet for Icon. But what I saw was, just from those brief comments that I made, it was like the top of the Icon subreddit, like, oh yeah, Doug's dissing us. And like, I don't see a way around that. I don't see a way around it. Like, I'm going to say when I think coins suck, like, honestly, fuck Ripple. Like, it's centralized garbage, and it makes no sense to me why it is what it is. I'm going to say stuff like that. And I know that there are going to be people like, oh, I love Ripple. Like, what, and I'm like, I don't have any problem with people that like Ripple. If you like Ripple, I disagree with you, but I have no problem with the viewer or someone that likes it. But I know that that's going to be seen as controversial. I know that's going to be seen as like, oh, Doug's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm okay with that. I'm not here to make friends with everyone. I'm okay if some people are going to get upset at me because I don't like your favorite shitcoin. I will also, I'm more than willing to admit that I don't know a ton of the currencies. I know probably most of the top 20 or 30. But even then, as you get into like the 30 to 50 range, tons I don't know. I try every day to learn what I can, to learn more and become more knowledgeable. I'm doing my best. But I'm not going to know every shitcoin, and I'm not going to like everything. And I hope that maybe you can at least respect my decision as to why, or respect my opinion rather, as to why I do or don't like. I don't think that should mean that anyone that likes those currencies shouldn't be allowed on the channel. I'm not a fan of Bitcoin Cash, but I actually had a good conversation on ArtBTC the other day where I asked some questions about my Roger Ver video, and the community actually kept it pretty civil. There were some posts that maybe weren't, but overall I thought we had a good discussion. I got some good information as far as why people like Bitcoin Cash. I do think that there are advantages to block size increase, but I also think that the Bitcoin development team is just superior, and that a lot of the innovation will end up long run being the better option. But if you like Bitcoin Cash, you're more than welcome here. If you like Ripple, I'm sorry, no, you're more than welcome here. If you like Tron, I'm gonna keep trolling Tron. It's just, look, we got Tron in the background right now. We got some Tron. You guys ready for some Tron? Tron. We got some Tron right there. So basically, like, I'm gonna just be me. I'm gonna say what I have to say. It's gonna be somewhat informed, or as informed as I can be. If you think that I'm an idiot and your coin's amazing, it's just how it's going to be. And like, I just can't see a better way of approaching it. All right, let's go ahead and move on. All right, let's see. What's up next? Talked about the ICOs. So this is actually kind of funny. One of the guys came in and was basically like, well, what about the stock market? That's what we're all thinking about right now, which was quite funny. Let's just actually pull that up because one of the last things here.
I can't really say, because thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I had not planned on having a second round, but I have agreed to allow Senator Shelby and Senator Warren to each have one brief question. Senator Shelby.
I want to get in the area of what's on a lot of people's minds today, and I know you don't control it. The stock market. What goes up comes down, as we all know.
This guy loves the ups and downs,
We don't know when and so forth. Is this perhaps more than an ordinary correction, or do you have a judgment on that at all?
This is such a weak sauce question. Like, man, maybe coming from poker is just really like made me not care about the swings. But dude, you've had like 2 or 3 bad days in like the sickest bull run in like the stock market's history over the course of the last decade. And we're getting cold feet. We're getting cold feet because the Dow Jones had a terrible day. Okay, a terrible day. What? It lost a few percent of its value. Like, I mean, it's insanity. Like, you know, like you don't get to make money every day, guys. I'm sorry. Unless you get bonds, right? You get some bonds, make money every day. So if you want to lose versus inflation, go for it. But you don't win every day. In fact, if you're gambling correctly or you're investing correctly or you're taking any edge in any spot correctly, you should lose often. Poker teaches you that. You take your 52s. When you're a 52% favorite, you take it because guess what? You make a couple percent here on that play, right? But like traditional investors, they just get so nitty and like, you know, when they lose, they go crazy. Like I think Richard Hart, like when Bitcoin tanked, he just kind of went crazy a little bit there just from all the money he lost. Or, you know, people are weak. They're weak and they get hurt easily and they get cold feet and they get like worried. And look, you gotta just be ice cold, man. You just gotta be ice cold. Pick a good strategy. That doesn't mean you should be irresponsible. Pick a good strategy. Pick what you think is best for you, and just do it. You know, just do it. Don't worry about like, goddamn, the Dow Jones went down today. Like, what is that question? Hey, head of the SEC, chairman of the SEC. I had a quick, really important question. Why did my stocks lose money yesterday? Just, what do you think? You know, it's just a kind of hilarious question. And I thought this answer was pretty amazing here too. Let's just pull this up.
I ask myself almost every day.
Of course, we all know that when the market is going up, people are elated.
Loves
That's
it.
natural.
Loves the ups
when
and the downs.
it's going down, some people profit, but not a lot of people are elated. Is that fair?
Fair.
You have any comment, Mr. Chairman?
I'm just smiling because just a recollection of a saying that a mentor of mine, who actually was my introduction into the financial markets, used to say. When I would ask him, he was an old hand in the markets, what drove the market up yesterday or down? He'd say, oh, it was up. Oh, more people bought than sold. Oh, it was down. More people sold than bought.
And that's really all you need to know because that's exactly how it works. I've got my own opinions on a lot of the technical analysis stuff. People drawing triangles, and everyone's an expert. Look, like markets are extremely complex. It's hard to know exactly why they're going up or down. There's tons of factors at play. Everyone wants to sound like an expert. Guess what? They're probably not when it comes to price. Now, there are definitely experts when it comes to the tech, but as far as price goes, be careful with what people have to say, and remember that people have an agenda. Okay, I think we have one last thing I want to bring up. Actually, you know what? It closes out with him talking about the SEC and ICOs again. Senator Warren actually comes back and asks some reasonable questions, which was good. I was glad to see that from her. But basically, he says no ICOs are registered with the SEC, and none currently are planning on it. But I actually think that that's not true. But what do I know? He's the chairman of the SEC. Okay, so let's talk summary of the events here, Doug. We can't all watch an hour-long video or an hour-and-a-half long video. Was it good? Overall, yes. Senators seemed interested in what was going on. Some of them actually seemed to have some knowledge of what was going on. Some of them didn't, but were interested, and not many of them seemed strictly negative. Now, there were a couple people that were more negative, that were sort of boring, that I didn't put into this video. So there were a couple people that were a little more maybe negative. But all in all, I would say that the U.S. Senate, at least within this committee, is interested in what's going on and wants to be informed moving into the future. I'd say that the Chairman Giancarlo of the CFTC, I think that he is extremely pro-cryptocurrency, but wants to make sure that they go after people that are behaving, incorrectly as much as they possibly can. Chairman of the SEC seems a little more on the fence, strongly believes that all ICOs are securities, wants to go after that. Doesn't seem to be a huge fan of the currencies themselves, but likes blockchain, which, as Senator Mark Warner said over the course of this, you can't really distinguish the two. I've also gained some respect for Mark Warner. I've lost a lot of respect for Elizabeth Warren for her just complete grandstanding of the subject at hand and just taking it as just like an agenda to just like attack this guy for no reason. And I was happy to see both Republicans and Democrats interested in this. You know, I think this might be a subject that both parties can kind of come together on and hopefully allow. Now, what does this mean? What does this mean moving forward? Well, I do think a bunch of the price drop I shouldn't say a bunch, but I'll say a part of the price drop was people being worried about as to what would happen here. Obviously, good stuff came of it, and we're seeing Bitcoin price already rebound a little bit as we go along. So that's good. I do think that'll have a small positive short-term effect. As far as what that means from here, I think it's way too early to tell. We don't know what's going to be like in the House. We don't really know what the president has to say. We don't really know what the Supreme Court, when things eventually reach there, I'm sure some stuff will in some capacity. We don't really know where they're at. And also, I don't think that this has really had time to become a partisan issue yet, because while it might be huge to us and very important to us in the scope of the world, or at least in the scope of what the government does, it's still a relatively small industry, and additionally, one that not many of them are in the know. Someone made a good point here, which was like the entire market cap of Bitcoin is not the market cap of many large companies, which is true. The entire market cap of cryptocurrency isn't as big as some of the biggest companies like Apple or Amazon, but it's growing, right? And we saw Senator Warner talk about the rate at which it grew, and if it continues to grow, it will become massive. So all in all, positive stuff, a lot of interest. I think that's how hearings tend to be a bit more people trying to get information rather than exerting their own opinions. Obviously, these are senators, so they do a bunch of that anyway, luckily for us. And I'm pretty excited about at least the head of the Chris Giancarlo, the head of the CFTC, and the head of the SEC. Mixed opinions, but not strictly negative by any stretch. So all in all, good day for Bitcoin, good day for cryptocurrencies. I would say a bad day for ICOs. Certainly some negative things on the outlines. And this is one thing that, my last thing to say to you guys, when it comes to cryptocurrency and a lot of these sub communities, a lot of our BTC, our cryptocurrency, our Bitcoin, a lot of the bigger ones, right? And even the smaller ones too. Oftentimes they become an echo chamber for what the largest group thinks, right? And so you see, we did it, guys, we won. And by all means, it's a good day, right? This is a good day. But there are negative things here that do matter and are important. And so it's important when you watch something, form your own opinions, think about what people are trying to do, think about the drawbacks, the pros and the cons, and approach it from an unbiased perspective. I think too often people look for something like this is good or this is bad. You have all the people that hope cryptocurrency fails, right? And I've been getting all these tweets lately like, Doug, ready to go back to poker, huh? Must be poker time. I see Bitcoin 6K. What Bitcoin 4K? We'll see you back in the streets. No, it's not like that. I'm not going to make content based on what price Bitcoin's at. But the people that dislike it, they want to see it fail. And so they're like, I told you guys, this is terrible, right? But then they don't think about the grand scheme of things. What has the growth been like over the last few years? Or the fact that the technology is actually improving drastically. The mempool, it was cleared recently. Transactions are faster and cheaper than ever. SegWit adoption increasing. We see Coinbase about to add SegWit as well, including Lightning Network, which will increase the speed of transactions drastically by adding off-chain solutions. These are all great things, right? They don't talk about that. Or the people that are pro-Bitcoin, they're just like, no, Bitcoin, when Moon, when Lambo. When Lambo, it's like, guys, you have to address problems, the funniest thing to me were the Bitcoin guys when transactions were getting out of control. And they're like, no, guys, look, listen, okay? This is a good thing. Really high transaction fees and slow times are a good thing because it makes it harder it makes it more of a store of value. And whenever I heard that type argument, I was like, this is just unfucking believable. What are you doing? Because these people become so tribal. That's kind of a problem with cryptocurrency in general. People become so tribal. They're like, oh yeah, well my currency's going to win because we're awesome. And then they just delete anything negative, right? And they just read all of the positive news. Guess what? All cryptocurrencies have upsides, all have downsides. Doesn't mean they're all equal. Doesn't mean that everything sucks and is good. They're all neutral. Some, I believe, are much better than others. But you have to be open. You have to have an open mind. There is, frankly, way too much goddamn information in cryptocurrency. There's way too much. It's impossible. I wake up and every day I start off, I read the news, right? I go to Coin Central, my news site, I read some there. I go to CoinDesk. I go to Cointelegraph. I go to YouTube. And I spend an hour or two just trying to learn what's going on. And that's before even trying to look at the tech or what projects are doing. There's so much information out there. Don't just turn a blind eye to the stuff you don't want to hear because you want what you're doing to be successful. Understand what's happening. be willing to change course if that means that, if you believe what's happening justifies it, and don't just become, you know, a mindless zealot for the cause of the projects that you currently believe in. Strong conclusion here. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me. If you enjoyed this, hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. Really been enjoying some cryptocurrency content. And remember, we have a podcast channel coming up. Got a couple guests lined up at some point in the next week or two. We'll be kicking that off, different channel entirely, with a little more focus on some live streams and podcasts and that type of stuff. All right, guys, really appreciate everyone tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a good time. I mean, look, I spent between this video and watching, I spent 4 or 5 hours today talking about and listening to a Senate hearing. Didn't think that was going to be happening this year. So that's it for me. Once again, thank you guys for tuning in. I'll see you again soon. Peace. Where's the off button?